I bought the seaside villa with my own money. Every dollar came from years I spent working late nights, skipping vacations, and saying no to things I wanted so I could build something of my own. The deed had only my name on it. The keys were in my purse. So when I drove up one quiet morning and saw my brother's truck in my driveway, I felt my stomach drop. When I walked inside, it got worse. His furniture was in my living room, his shoes by the door, his voice echoing down the hallway like he had lived there for years. And standing out on my balcony was a man in a suit, holding a folder, smiling like the house already belonged to them. I didn't scream. I didn't call the police. I didn't tell them what I knew. I smiled and decided to wait. Stick with me. My name is Marin Holloway. Early 30s. I built my life quietly. No noise, no help, no safety net. Buying that $2.8 million seaside villa in Northern California was not just a purchase. It was proof that I made it out of the childhood I came from. Growing up, my older brother Ellis was always the center of everything. If he failed, he was finding himself. If I succeeded, it was expected. I learned early that if I wanted security, I had to create it myself. That house was my freedom. So seeing Ellis standing in my kitchen, holding a coffee mug like he owned the place, felt unreal. He smiled when he saw me. Calm. Too calm. "Oh good, you're here," he said, like I was the guest. "We need to talk about the house. There's a family understanding." Before I could even respond, the suited man stepped forward and introduced himself as Caleb Rourke, Ellis's attorney. Attorney. That's when it hit me. This wasn't impulsive. Ellis hadn't just crashed there. He came with paperwork, with confidence, with a plan he believed would hold up. They spoke like everything was already settled. Like I would do what I always did, stay quiet and make things easy. And I let them think that. I nodded. I listened. I even agreed to review things peacefully. Inside, I was burning. But I kept my voice steady, my face calm. Because while Ellis talked, I started noticing details. The documents he mentioned. The trust language he referenced. And then I saw it, the small legal detail he had overlooked. Tiny, but fatal to his claim. In that moment, standing in my own stolen living room, I realized something important. Ellis thought he had already won. He had no idea I was about to let him lose slowly. After that morning in the villa, I couldn't sleep. I kept walking from room to room, looking at walls that were supposed to feel like peace but now felt heavy. Every corner of the house pulled memories out of me I hadn't visited in years. Growing up, I was always called the reliable one. It sounded like praise, but it really meant I was the one who fixed everything. If bills were late, I helped. If something broke, I handled it. If our parents were stressed, I stayed quiet so I wouldn't add to it. Ellis was different. If he messed up, it was never his fault. He was going through something. He was figuring life out. When he dropped out of college, my parents paid his debts. When he started businesses that failed, they covered the losses. When I got scholarships, jobs, promotions, people just nodded like it was expected. No one ever rescued me. I remember one night clearly. I was 16, working part-time, saving for my future. Ellis had crashed my car, and my parents used part of my college fund to fix the damages because he needed help getting back on his feet. I didn't argue. I never argued. Over time, promises started forming, quiet ones never written. My parents would say things like, "One day everything will balance out," or "Family takes care of each other." But family always seemed to mean me taking care of Ellis. When our parents passed, the will was simple but messy emotionally. Assets were split, but there were old family trust discussions tied to properties our grandparents once owned. Nothing connected to my villa, but Ellis clearly believed history gave him rights. Standing in that house now, listening to him talk about family understanding, I realized he wasn't joking. He truly believed he was entitled to what I built. He kept bringing up the past in subtle ways. "You always did well, Mayor. You know I struggled more. Mom always said you'd make sure I was okay." He wasn't asking. He was framing the story so that my success automatically included him. That's when it clicked for me. The villa wasn't just a house to him. It was payback. In his mind, life owed him balance, and I was the one meant to provide it, like always. He thought I would fold out of guilt, habit, or family loyalty. He thought I was still the quiet sister who would sacrifice comfort to keep peace. But standing there, looking at the ocean through windows I paid for, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time, I saw the pattern clearly. And I knew one thing for sure. This time, the childhood debt he believed I owed. I had no intention of paying it. The night after I found Ellis in my house, I pulled every document I had into the dining room. Purchase agreement, escrow records, title insurance, bank transfers. I spread them across the table like puzzle pieces. If he wanted to make this legal, fine. Legal was my comfort zone. I didn't rush. I read line by line, slowly, highlighting dates, signatures, and property descriptions. I checked the wire transfers that proved the money came only from my accounts. No shared funds. No family trust involvement. Clean. That's when I requested a copy of the claim his lawyer filed. When it arrived, I understood their angle immediately. Ellis wasn't saying he paid for the villa. He was arguing that the property fell under expanded family trust interest, tied to old coastal land investments our grandparents once held decades ago. It sounded impressive on paper, but it was outdated language. That trust had been dissolved and redistributed long before I bought the villa. They were trying to stretch dead paperwork over a living purchase. Desperate, but dangerous if ignored. As I read deeper, I noticed something else. The filing was aggressive in tone but sloppy in structure. Dates didn't align. Supporting exhibits were incomplete. One attachment referenced a parcel number that didn't even match my property. That's when I formed my first real opinion of Caleb Rourke. Confident, pushy, but careless. He was relying on intimidation, assuming I'd panic or settle before digging too deep. Instead of confronting Ellis, I called someone else. Naomi Pierce. She was a semi-retired real estate litigator and an old family acquaintance. Sharp mind, calm voice, the kind of woman who could dismantle an argument without raising her tone. We met quietly at her office overlooking the marina. She read everything without interrupting, page after page, occasionally humming under her breath. When she finally looked up, she didn't look worried. She looked amused. "He filed this thinking you wouldn't read it," she said plainly. She walked me through every weakness, the dissolved trust, the invalid claim structure, the jurisdictional stretch. Then she pointed to the biggest flaw of all. By filing this challenge the way he did, Ellis had opened himself up to counterclaims if fraud or falsification appeared later. He thought he was applying pressure. He was exposing himself. I asked her what we should do next. Naomi leaned back, folded her glasses, and said something that shifted my entire approach. Nothing. Not yet. She told me Ellis was overplaying his hand. If we moved too fast, we'd scare him into fixing mistakes. But if we waited, he'd keep talking, keep filing, keep digging himself deeper. So I left her office calm, documents in hand, strategy clear in my mind. Ellis believed the paperwork would scare me into surrender. What he didn't realize was simple. I had read every word, and I was about to let his own paper trail undo him. Living in my own house started to feel strange, almost unreal. Ellis moved around the villa like he had always lived there. He spoke to contractors on the phone, discussing renovation ideas I never approved. He introduced himself to neighbors as if he were the owner. I even overheard him talking about our property taxes one afternoon. I didn't correct him. Not out loud. Utilities started shifting too. Packages arrived in his name. He called service companies to update household details. Small moves, but intentional. He was trying to create the image that he belonged there permanently. And I let him. I told him I was open to temporary arrangements while we sorted things legally. I kept my tone calm, almost cooperative. It surprised him at first, but then it relaxed him. He thought I was folding. We began sharing meals occasionally, mostly because neither of us wanted open hostility while lawyers were involved. Those dinners were the most tense moments of my life. We spoke politely, but every sentence carried weight underneath. He'd say things like, "This place really suits both of us," or "It's nice knowing family keeps things together." Passive statements. Soft on the surface. Heavy underneath. I responded carefully, never agreeing, never arguing. Just listening. One night, after a few drinks, his guard slipped. He started venting about money. Bad investments. Loans that went wrong. Partnerships that collapsed. He didn't give full details, but enough for me to understand the truth. He wasn't here because he loved the villa. He was drowning financially. This house, to him, wasn't sentimental, it was survival. If he could claim partial ownership, he could leverage it, refinance it, maybe even force a sale. That night confirmed everything. From that point on, I became quieter, but more observant. I started documenting. Every contractor he spoke to. Every bill he tried to alter. Every message, every notice, every claim he made about residency. I saved emails. took photos of delivered packages, logged dates when he hosted guests or spoke to neighbors as co-owner. I never confronted him about any of it. I just stored it away, silently, because the more comfortable he felt, the more careless he became. He thought we were slowly negotiating coexistence. He thought time would pressure me into compromise. But living there like a guest gave me something valuable: access. I saw everything he was doing to establish false control. And the more he tried to root himself into my house, the more evidence he was leaving behind. By the time this ended, he wouldn't just lose the claim. He'd have to explain every step he took trying to take what wasn't his. A week later, I went back through the trust documents Ellis's lawyer had referenced. Not just the copies they filed, but the archived originals Naomi helped me request from county records. I sat at my desk by the window, ocean in the background, papers spread out again. At first, everything looked routine. Old property transfers, trustee names, dissolution filings. Then I saw it. A signature page tied to an amendment made years ago. One that supposedly extended partial interest rights to future coastal acquisitions by direct heirs. That clause was the backbone of Ellis's claim. But something felt off. I pulled the verified original signature samples from the same trustee, my late mother. I compared the handwriting carefully. Same name, same style at first glance. But the flow was wrong. My mother had a slight upward curve at the end of her signature. This one ended flat. The pressure marks were different too, heavier, forced. I scanned both and sent them to Naomi. She called me within an hour. Her voice was calm, but sharper than usual. That signature isn't authentic, she said. She explained it clearly. If Ellis submitted a falsified trust amendment to support a property claim, it crossed from civil dispute into criminal territory, document fraud, possibly forgery charges. I felt my chest tighten when she said it. Not because I was shocked Ellis would lie, but because of how far he'd gone. He didn't just assume entitlement. He manufactured it. I asked Naomi what we should do next. Part of me wanted to confront him immediately, throw the proof in front of him, watch his confidence collapse. But Naomi stopped me. Too early, she said. She explained that if we exposed the forgery now, Ellis and his lawyer would retreat, adjust filings, maybe even try to cover tracks. Right now, they believed their position was strong. That belief was useful. If we waited, they might submit more documents, repeat the fraud, deepen their liability. Patience would turn one crime into a pattern. I sat quietly after the call, staring at the forged page. I thought about every childhood moment where Ellis got away with things because no one wanted conflict. This was bigger than that. This wasn't favoritism anymore. This was calculated deception. That night, Ellis knocked on my office door, asking casually if I'd reviewed the trust addendum yet. I looked up at him, calm as ever. Still going through it, I said. He nodded, relaxed, completely unaware of what I had already found. And I decided right then, I wouldn't confront him. Not yet. If Ellis wanted to build his claim on lies, I'd let him keep building. Higher. Until the fall hurt enough that he'd never try to take from me again. A few weeks after the trust issue surfaced, Ellis made his next move. He pushed for mediation. His lawyer sent a formal notice saying it would be faster and more peaceful if we settled ownership terms privately instead of dragging things through court. On paper, it sounded reasonable, but I knew what it really meant. He wanted to pressure me into giving up partial rights before the deeper legal review finished. We met at a neutral office downtown. Long table. Glass walls. Too quiet. Ellis sat across from me looking confident, almost relaxed. Caleb Rourke sat beside him with a thick folder and the kind of smile that tried to feel intimidating. The mediator opened the discussion politely, but Caleb took over quickly. He laid out their proposal like it was generous. Ellis would retain shared occupancy rights. Future sale profits would be split. Renovation decisions would require joint approval. It was structured to sound balanced, but it was a slow transfer of control. I listened without interrupting. Then Caleb slid the trust amendment across the table, pointing at the clause tied to coastal acquisitions. That language gives my client standing, he said firmly. I finally spoke. Calm. Even. I reviewed that amendment, I said, along with the dissolution filings that came after it. Caleb's expression shifted slightly, just a flicker. I placed a separate document on the table. Not the forgery proof. Not the handwriting analysis. Just a certified record showing the trust's legal termination date, years before I purchased the villa. Enough to weaken his claim. Not enough to expose the crime. The mediator leaned forward, reading carefully. The room's energy shifted. Caleb argued back, but his tone lost some sharpness. He hadn't expected me to come prepared. Ellis, though, misunderstood what was happening. Instead of concern, he leaned back in his chair like he was still in control. He started speaking more boldly, suggesting I was being emotional, and that dragging this out would only cost me more money. He thought my selective evidence was everything I had. He didn't know I was holding the forgery proof back. By the end of the session, no settlement was reached. The mediator called it inconclusive. Outside the building, Ellis caught up to me in the parking lot. "You should really think this through," he said, almost smug. "This won't end how you think." I just nodded like I was worried, because the truth was the opposite. He walked away believing he was gaining ground. Caleb clearly believed it too. He treated me like someone stalling out of fear, not strategy. They both underestimated me completely. And that was exactly where I needed them, because the more confident they felt, the less careful they became. And when the real evidence finally surfaced, they wouldn't see it coming. The storm rolled in fast, the way coastal storms always do. By evening, the sky had turned dark gray, and the wind started hitting the villa hard enough to rattle the windows. Rain came down in heavy sheets, loud against the roof. Then the power went out. Just like that, the whole house went quiet. No lights. No internet. No distractions. Just me and Ellis, stuck inside the same walls neither of us was willing to leave. We lit candles and used flashlights. The ocean outside was loud, waves crashing hard enough to shake the glass doors. At first, we stayed in separate spaces. I was in the living room, reviewing notes by candlelight. He was pacing the kitchen, clearly restless. Eventually, he walked in and sat across from me. No lawyer. No paperwork. Just us. The silence stretched until he finally spoke. "You're really going to fight me on this?" he asked. His tone wasn't aggressive. It sounded tired. I didn't answer right away. He sighed and rubbed his face, like the pressure was finally catching up to him. "I just thought," he started, then stopped. "Thought what?" I asked quietly. He looked at me, and for the first time since moving in, he didn't look confident. "I thought you'd take care of things," he admitted. The words hung heavy in the air. He went on, talking more openly than I'd ever heard. He said growing up, he always believed I was stronger, more capable. That when things went wrong in his life, it made sense I'd step in, because I always had before. Car trouble. Debt. Mistakes. I had fixed things quietly so many times he started seeing it as normal. Not kindness. Obligation. Old memories started surfacing between us. The college fund incident. The loans I helped cover. The times I delayed my own plans to stabilize his life. He didn't deny any of it. He just shrugged like that was how family worked. "You always land on your feet," he said. "I figured you'd make room." That sentence changed something in me, because he truly didn't see what he was doing as theft. He saw it as balance. I looked around the darkened villa, the house I'd built from years of sacrifice. "You didn't ask for room," I said calmly. "You tried to take the house." He didn't argue. The storm outside grew louder, but inside something shifted quietly. For the first time, Ellis looked uncertain. Not defensive. Not arrogant. Just unsure. And in that moment, the power between us finally changed. Because he realized I wasn't the same sister who fixed his problems anymore. And I realized he had never planned to stop taking. Unless I made him. By the time the next week came, I was ready. I had spent days organizing every scrap of evidence I had collected since Ellis first moved in. Every photo, email, delivery notice, and financial record was carefully documented. I added the forgery proof Naomi had helped verify, the falsified trust amendment, and the claims he'd made about living arrangements that weren't true. Every piece told the same story. Ellis had tried to take my villa using lies and manipulation. I filed a formal counterclaim with the court. It felt good to hold the documents in my hands, knowing they weren't just papers, they were the truth. The filing included everything, clearly labeled and numbered. Nothing hidden. Nothing unclear. Every detail that Ellis and Caleb had relied on to pressure me was now being challenged with solid proof. Almost immediately, the authorities got involved. The fraud and forgery aspects were serious enough to draw attention beyond the civil dispute. I watched as notices were sent, investigations were flagged, and legal inquiries started moving. I had anticipated their reactions, but seeing it unfold was quietly satisfying. Caleb Rourke, Ellis's lawyer, who had been so confident at the mediation and in our early interactions, started backing away. First, it was small things, a missed call, a delayed response. Then, a formal withdrawal from the case. I wasn't surprised. His approach had been all intimidation and pressure, with no real attention to detail. Once the evidence appeared airtight, he had no choice. Ellis, on the other hand, didn't know what to do. He called a few frantic meetings with his new legal contacts, pacing the villa like a trapped animal. I stayed calm, observing him quietly, making notes as he revealed more of his desperation with every phone call, every whispered conversation. He had counted on me folding under pressure, under expectation, under the weight of family guilt. Instead, every attempt he made to claim control had been recorded, verified, and submitted. The villa was no longer just my home. It was my shield. For the first time since this began, I saw panic in his eyes. The confidence that had carried him into my home, thinking he could intimidate and manipulate me, had evaporated. He realized that the game had changed, and I wasn't just defending my property anymore. Everything he tried to do, every lie he counted on, was now in my hands, and the law was on my side. And I didn't need to say a word. The court date came faster than I expected, though I had prepared for months. I sat quietly in the courtroom, my hands folded, watching Ellis pace in front of the judge like a caged animal. Caleb Rourke was long gone, and Ellis now had a new lawyer who didn't know the case like I did. The judge listened to both sides, reviewing the evidence carefully. I watched as the forgery proof, the financial records, and all the documentation I had collected were laid out. Each piece strengthened my position. Each fact showed clearly that Ellis had acted dishonestly and with intent. When the ruling finally came, it was everything I hoped for. The court recognized my sole ownership of the villa. Every claim Ellis made was dismissed. The trust language he had tried to manipulate was declared irrelevant. He was ordered to vacate immediately, and the court noted the seriousness of the forgery and misrepresentation. Ellis looked shocked, pale, and smaller than I had ever seen him. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just listened quietly as the judge outlined the consequences. He would face financial penalties, legal fees, and potential further investigation for document fraud. His plans to claim my home had collapsed entirely. The family didn't know about the court case until afterward. I received messages and calls from relatives, surprised and concerned, many trying to understand what had really happened. For the first time, the truth was clear to them. They saw how much I had sacrificed over the years, and how Ellis had tried to take advantage of it. I didn't gloat. I didn't send him a single text or try to humiliate him. I simply refused to rescue him. He had made his choices, and now he faced the consequences. It was a quiet kind of justice, the kind that didn't need applause. Walking back into my villa afterward, I felt the weight I had been carrying lift slightly. The tension, the fear, the constant undercurrent of dread that Ellis would somehow succeed, it was gone. The villa felt different now. Free. Mine in every sense. I stood by the windows looking at the waves, listening to the ocean crash against the shore. For the first time, I allowed myself to breathe fully. I hadn't just defended property. I had defended my life, my effort, and my peace of mind. The battle was over, and the calm that settled over me told me something important. Victory didn't need to be loud to feel complete. Ellis left the villa early one morning, long before I was awake. I found his truck gone, the driveway empty, and the house finally quiet. No boxes, no voices, no lingering tension. Just the ocean outside and the familiar scent of salt in the air. I walked through the rooms slowly, touching walls I had dreamed about painting, floors I had longed to see polished, and windows that framed the ocean exactly how I wanted. Every corner was mine now, truly mine, without argument or shadow. I paused in the living room and just breathed. The villa was no longer a battlefield. It was home. I called the contractors I had lined up weeks ago and gave them instructions. Renovations began on my terms this time. Fresh paint, new light fixtures, rearranged furniture, everything decided by me alone. It felt like I was building more than a house. I was building freedom, boundaries, and a space that belonged entirely to me. Neighbors noticed the change too. Friendly greetings, cautious smiles, curiosity in their eyes, but I felt no need to explain. I didn't owe anyone justification. The villa wasn't a trophy. It wasn't a statement. It was proof of what I had built for myself, and it was a boundary. A clear line between what I allowed in my life and what I refused. For days, I moved carefully through each room, deciding what stayed, what went, and how I wanted the space to feel. I kept mementos from years of work, photographs of achievements, and small things that reminded me of my own effort. Each choice was deliberate. Each decision quiet but powerful. Sometimes I thought about Ellis. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel hatred. I just felt relief. Relief that I didn't have to negotiate, justify, or fear him anymore. He had tried to take from me, but I had protected myself. And now, I could live without the constant weight of someone else's entitlement pressing in. Standing on the balcony at sunset, watching the waves roll in, I smiled softly to myself. I didn't need anyone to witness it. No one needed to understand it. The villa wasn't proof for anyone else. It was proof for me. And in that quiet, I realized something important. Peace doesn't come from revenge. Peace comes from reclaiming your life, standing firm, and refusing to let anyone cross the boundaries you've set. The villa would never be a symbol of triumph over him. It would be a symbol of strength, clarity, and self-respect. Finally, I was home. This story shows the importance of knowing your legal rights and documenting everything carefully when facing family disputes or property conflicts. Always consult a trusted lawyer, keep clear records, and stay patient. Protecting yourself calmly can prevent exploitation and secure your assets. Learn, plan, and act wisely.